Good morning, everyone. We are very excited to have you joining us today for our live stream all about how to monetize your podcast. Good morning, everyone. We are so excited that you managed to join us this morning for our live stream, which is all about how and when to monetize your podcast. We've got a really exciting agenda lined up for you. But to start with, we'll do some quick introductions. My name is Miki, and I'm part of the business development team at Descript. And I'm joined by Agnes. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Agnes. I'm one of the founders of Podcorn. Really excited to be here.
Excellent. So Agnes and I are going to be diving into the details of Descript and Podcorn very shortly, but just to give you sort of the very high level view, Descript is an audio and video editing tool, and Podcorn is a podcast monetization platform. And so we'll be diving into the details of that very soon, but wanted to make sure that you knew where we were both from right off the bat. So to start with, I will briefly take you through our agenda for the day. So as I mentioned, our topic for today is how and when to monetize your podcast. And first, we'll do a brief review of Descript. I'll take you through a live demo. Then we'll do an overview of Podcorn, which Agnes is going to lead. And then we're super excited because we actually have two podcasters with us today, Sabrina and Garret, who are the hosts of I Know Dino, the world's most popular dinosaur podcast. And Marilyn from our team is going to be interviewing them about their best practices using Descript and Podcorn. And all of you will also have lots of questions, a lot of opportunity to ask questions. So on the topic of questions, I wanted to mention that we would love to have lots of questions from you all today while we're live. And you might notice in the who below window, if you're joining on there, that there is a live chat section, and then there's also a column specifically for Q&A. So to help us make sure that we see your questions, please make sure to add those in the Q&A column, and we'll do our best to get to as many of those as possible. And so with that, I will dive straight into our demo of Descript. So I mentioned that Descript is an audio and video editing tool, but as I'm sharing my screen here, I'll kind of give you a little bit more background. It's a desktop app that makes editing audio and video content as easy as editing text. And so I'll take you through all the steps of what that looks like in practice. But to start with, what you're seeing here is a blank Descript project. And so the first thing that you're going to want to do is to actually get your content into our platform. You can record your podcast directly in Descript, but what a lot of our users tend to try and do is they actually record in another platform and then they'll drag and drop their content into Descript. And so for the purpose of our demo today, that's what I'm going to do. So I have a video here of a TED Talk by a guy named Jack Horner, who is a very prominent paleontologist. So I've just dragged that file into Descript. And as you can see, the first thing that's happening is Descript is prompting me to enter in my speaker name. So our speaker today is Jack. I figured I'd pick some dinosaur-related content. And then I'm going to click Done. Now, I'm using a piece of video content today, but please note that anything I'm showing you also works with purely an audio file as well. The reason I'm using video is that a lot of podcasters, as I'm sure many of you know, will choose to record both audio and video. And so today I'm going to use a video example to show you what all the different features can look like. It takes about 3 to 4 minutes for Descript to transcribe an hour's worth of content. And once that's finished, you'll end up with a project that looks something like this. So on the left here, I have my transcript. On the right, I have my video. And then down below, we have what we call the timeline, which is kind of a classic representation of what some other audio and video editing tools might look like. So I said right at the top that Descript makes editing audio and video as easy as editing text. And so I want to start with how that works, because if there's one thing that you take away from our demo today, I hope it's that. So here I have my transcript, and let's say that I want to kind of delete this sentence in the middle. So I'm going to play this out for you so you can hear what the original sounds like.
In fact, one of the most asked questions I get is, why do children like dinosaurs so much? I mean, what's the fascination?
All right. So let's say I want to take out that middle sentence that says, I mean, what's the fascination? So I'm just going to highlight that text and hit the delete key. And now if I play that from the same spot, you'll see it actually skips over that section I just
In fact,
deleted.
one of the most asked questions I get is, why do children like dinosaurs so much? And I usually just say, well,
Excellent. So that's what we mean when we say that you can edit your audio and video just like editing text. So as I said, if there's one thing that you take away from our demo, it would be that piece right there. So once we've done that, I think it's worth noting that Descript is a very forgiving tool. And so our edits are all non-destructive. And so if I decide I actually want to take that sentence and bring it back, it's as simple as coming down to the timeline view and simply dragging this back out. And as you can see, it's reappearing in the timeline, and I'm also pulling it back out here in my transcript. Excellent. So we've covered the most important rule of Descript, which is editing your content as easily as editing text. But I want to show you guys a couple of other things that you can do to really improve the kind of quality of your transcript. So for one, you might notice these kind of awkward pauses here. It's saying 8 seconds, 8.5 seconds, etc. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and remove all of those awkward gaps. So I'm going to click my tool icon, shorten the word gaps, and I'm going to say that anything longer than, let's say, 1.5 seconds, I'm going to shorten it down to 1.5 seconds, apply to all. So I've just gotten rid of all of those awkward pauses. The next thing I'm going to do is you might see these words underlined in blue. So that's Descript's way of telling me that they've identified some filler words. I certainly use filler words. I'm sure that many of you do as well, despite all of our best efforts. And so I'm going to go up here to the tool icon again, click remove my filler words, and I can actually customize which ones I want to take out. So in this case, I'm just going to remove my uhs and my ums. And I could delete them, but for now, I'm just going to ignore them. And I'm going to say apply to all. Excellent. So I've shortened my word gaps. I've deleted some of my filler words. And then the next thing we would do to really kind of clean up my transcript and clean up my audio specifically is I'm going to use a tool called Studio Sound. Studio Sound is a noise canceling and audio enhancing tool, a voice enhancing tool. And so as much as we would all love to always be recording under optimal conditions, you might sometimes have some background noise, you might be recording on your iPhone, et cetera. And this is a one-click solution to really raise the quality of your audio. So the way to do that is to navigate onto the left here, and then it's literally a one-click I can choose to slide on for Studio Sound. So I'll play this audio for you again, and you'll hear in the background of Jack speaking, there's some audience laughter. It's a little bit echoey. So I'll give you a sense of what that sounds like.
I hope you all realize that, right? So I'll just give you my
Awesome. And now I'm going to apply Studio Sound.
message up front. Try not to go extinct. People ask.
Excellent. So now I'll just play one more clip, and I'm going to toggle it on and off so you can hear that side by side really clearly.
In fact, one of the most asked questions I get
Studio
is,
Sound is now
why
off.
do children like dinosaurs so much? What's the
And I'm
fascination?
turning it back on.
And I usually just say, well,
Great. So I've cleaned up my transcript. I've raised the quality of my audio. And now I'm ready to kind of figure out what my key moments from my interview or from my podcast are. And so in this case, I want to find out the moments where Jack is talking about skulls. And so I'm going to toggle here to the left again, and I'm going to look for all the times that Jack has said the word skull. Excellent. So I've got a few examples here. Let's go to the second one. I'm going to then just go in here and highlight this section that's really important for my podcast. I'm going to highlight that in yellow. Let's say I want to pull maybe one more section from there. I'll take this fourth one, highlight this again, highlight that in this yellow color. So I've chosen some key moments here, and then I'm going to go through, I'm going to copy all of my highlights, and I'm going to create a new composition. And a composition is just an arrangement of your file. So I'm going to call this composition, let's see, highlights. There we go. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste my highlights in. So as you can see, it's really easy for me to now start taking bits and pieces from maybe different audio files, different video files, and start bringing them together all into one place and crafting my storyline. So once I'm here, let's say that I have just perfected my my podcast, and I'm now ready to add some captions and maybe some shapes and other designs. So to add my captions, I'm going to highlight here. I'm going to hit Command K, which is the most important keyboard shortcut in Descript. It's how you tell Descript what you want it to do. So I've hit Command K. I'm just going to start typing captions. My fancy captions come up, and I'm going to do a little bit of customization. So I'll change my font to, let's call it Roboto. I'll keep my size the same. I like them centered. And let's see, I'll make my background color this kind of magenta one. I'll give this a play so you guys can see what that looks like.
And there are 12 of them that everyone recognizes.
Great. So I've got my captions in there. And let's say I want to add in a shape or something else to draw attention to a specific point. So I'm going to hit Command K again. I'm going to drop in an arrow. Let's see, I'll point it to this Nanotyrannus, which I'm going to have to ask Sabrina and Garret about a little bit later on to see if they know what that is, because I certainly do not. But I've added in my arrow, and now I'm ready to go. So I've created my perfect podcast here. And now the next thing I'm ready to do is publish it. So a bunch of different options here on the publishing front, but it all starts by hitting share and then export. So I'll briefly take you through the options. You can publish as an unlisted web page. This is really useful if you're collaborating with other teammates and you need some kind of review and approval process. Otherwise, you can export directly to YouTube or to a series of podcast hosts such as Buzzsprout and several others. You can also do a file export, so I can take my transcript and download it as a Word document. I can download my audio separately, my subtitles separately, etc. Or I can export it to another piece of editing software if I so choose. The last piece I want to show you here in terms of publishing is our audiogram feature, because today we're really focused on monetizing, and I think we'll hear from Sabrina and Garret a bit later on, but a great way to kind of start that process is to be able to promote your podcast. And audiograms are a visual representation of the audio of your podcast, and they're a great way to share a highlight on social media. So we've got a couple of different formats that you can use here, and they're also fully customizable. So I can change the color, I can choose a background image, so I can have a nice dinosaur in the background if I'd like to, and I can add on a custom logo or anything else. So that's a brief overview of what our publishing options are. The last thing I want to mention before I pass it over to Agnes to talk about Podcorn is a feature called Overdub. So Overdub is a synthetic voice tool, and it allows you to train a voice with about 10 minutes of audio as a minimum, but preferably a little bit more. And then you'll have a synthetic voice that sounds just like you as the podcaster. You can use it to go in and either make spot edits here and there instead of re-recording the whole podcast, or you could even type something out and have it just be fully from text to speech right from the get-go. So I obviously, I'm not the owner of Jack Horner's voice, so I cannot recreate his, but I have a couple of examples here of what Overdub looks like in action. So I've Ian Malcolm and John Hammond here, which for any Jurassic Park fans, you might recognize them as the two main characters. And I've got a couple of famous quotes, but I'll just play you what these overdubs sound like.
Life finds a way. Your scientists were so preoccupied with whether they could, they didn't stop to think if they should.
So that's what overdub sounds like. As I said, you can use our stock voices, which I've done here, but you can also create your own voice with as little as 10 minutes of training audio. So the last thing I'll show you is how to create an overdub from scratch. And so in this case, I'm going to choose another one of our stock voices, and I'm going to have Don actually introduce our next segment. So I'm going to paste this text in. This text has never been said out loud before. It's going to take Overdub a couple of seconds here to generate that audio, and then Don here will introduce our next segment. All right.
And now, the moment you've all been waiting for, expert advice on how to monetize your podcast.
Thanks, Don. All right, I'm going to stop screen sharing here. And Agnes, I will now pass it over to you for a demo of Podcorn.
Thank you. That was so informative. I learned so much. Hi, everybody. So I'm really excited to tell you a bit about Podcorn. So the reason that we created the platform is that there really was a lack of infrastructure for podcasters to be in the driver's seat and collaborate with advertisers directly without a middleman. And the other issue that we really wanted to solve for in this space was that with traditional ad insert opportunities, majority of independent podcasters unless they were already really big, didn't have a way to monetize, or the ones that were monetizing pennies per listener hour. So with Podcorn, we are a marketplace and we focus on native sponsorship opportunities. So podcasters can also price themselves and get hired for things like host reads, interview segments, topical discussions, product reviews, how-tos, tutorials, anything and everything that fits natively with whatever it is that they're already doing and sort of matches their voice and their audience. And they can price themselves on different factors than just impressions, because that's the big thing that we found very limiting, is that a lot of the opportunities were very impression based versus like what your influence is within your community of audiences, what your topical expertise is, or what what the length of integration is that you're going to be creating for the brand. So we wanted to provide an opportunity to give podcasters an ability to decide how they are priced. So just to highlight some of the benefits of Podcorn before I kind of jump into how it works, but essentially monetization, you get to monetize on your own terms. Choose as many or as little opportunities as you want to. We're not a network, so we don't sign talent. You can think of us sort of as an Airbnb for podcast sponsorships. Podcasters can come and go as they see fit, choose brands that they want to work with. We provide a safe collaboration environment. Brands are required to deposit money immediately upon hiring a podcaster, which is held securely in escrow throughout the duration of the entire campaign, so that you are secure and you know that you are always going to get paid for the work that you do. We also provide a streamlined process. So basically everything, making it easy for brands to discover podcasters, easy for podcasters to basically manage menu opportunities at scale and get paid in a very efficient and quick manner. We also provide podcasters with the freedom to price themselves, as I said, on their own terms, also creative freedom to dictate how you want to collaborate with brands. So podcasters get to send proposals and say, which episodes or how they are wanting to be integrated with. Very often with sort of traditional ad formats, podcasters and brands don't really get to dictate where they're going to be placed. But here you can actually make it organic and authentic in a way that makes sense for your audience. Podcorn is free for podcasters to sign up, free to browse opportunities. We only take a 10% fee at the end, which you get to actually price in to your own fee, but that's sort of what we retain at the end for a completed transaction. As I said, there's no exclusivity, so you can come and go as you see fit and get hired as often or as little as you want. So that's basically it in a nutshell. I'm just gonna, if we can jump into sort of like the first slide, and then I'll share with you how Podcorn works. So to get started, you basically just need to have an active podcast with an RSS feed URL in order to sign up, and you can automatically begin browsing opportunities in your sponsorship feed. So your sponsorship feed is where you'll see all the different brands that you can work with. You can browse and see who you want to work with. We recommend, doing your homework on the brands, choosing brands that fit with your passion, with your interest, or whether it's something that your listeners will be excited about. And then once you see opportunities that you like, you can send brands a proposal. There you can choose the type of content that you want to do, whether you want to do host reads, pre, mid, post roles, whether you want to do an interview segment or a topical discussion. In the opportunities that brands show you, you will have an opportunity to see what brands are interested in. Usually brands provide podcasters with a range of options, as that's what we suggest for brands to do. So you can choose whatever it is that you are an expert in or what you think will fit with your episode. We recommend sort of using the proposal to really think about what you want to come across to the brand, spell out sort of what makes you and your podcast unique, and show brands that you understand your fans. And for instance, you might be a mom who's also into fitness and you want to work with a fitness brand, but your podcast is a parenting podcast. So it might not be obvious right off the bat that you're also a fitness guru. So spell those things out for the brands. when you send a proposal, you get to price yourself. You can determine, so basically, like, we offer podcasters an opportunity to price themselves on a flat fee. So it's not based on how many impressions your ad generates for the brand, but you get to set a flat fee in advance that you want to get hired for. We do this because we want to guarantee that podcasters get paid for the creative work that they do, no matter how the ad performs, since there's no guarantee. But we recommend that it's up to you kind of how you price yourself, but a lot of podcasters price themselves based on a CPM. And we recommend calculating it by looking at your average 30-day per episode downloads, just to get a sense of what your average episode performance will be. Once you get hired, we can jump into the next slide. A workroom will open up. This is where you and the brand can securely and safely collaborate, exchange talking points, and ask any questions that you need during the duration of the entire campaign. So we recommend, asking brands to send you a product if it's a product that is physical and you can actually try, so that you can test it and really give an authentic endorsement if you like it. Also, use the workroom to set expectations for brands. So in terms of, like, for instance, like letting them know what you might say about the product or the company, spell those things out, not necessarily with a script, because we recommend it to be all in your own voice and to make sense for you and to be authentic, but just to let brands know kind of the general talking points that you're thinking of, because sometimes there may be things or claims that you can't make about a product or ways to pronounce it. So those are things that it's good to spell out in the workroom. And I always recommend that you ask brands for sort of coupon codes or discount codes that you can share with your audience. It just drives a little bit more goodwill within your own listenership, but also just gives an extra incentive to your audience to take action with the product. And make sure to ask in the workroom also, like, any calls to action that you want brands to take, whether you're driving listeners to a particular website or a certain sign up page, or whether the brand is collecting emails. Just make sure you know kind of what their call to action is, and also make sure to always have disclosures as well. And we have that in every workroom, that we provide guidance both to brands and podcasters how to do disclosures in terms of just calling out that you're collaborating with this brand. And once you also created your content, the workroom is where you can upload it for the brand to review or request any edits if needed. And then as soon as the brand approves your content, we release the money immediately to you, so that you don't have to wait long. You get paid immediately upon the completion of every sponsorship. So we can jump to the last slide. So basically, like, your dashboard is where you kind of have a holistic view of everything going on, your calendar, sponsorship coming up, everything that you have in the works, and you can kind of manage all of your campaigns within the dashboard. So yeah, please let me know if you have any questions.
Excellent. Thank you for that overview, Agnes. I think it's super cool to hear what Podcorn has created and how it's really kind of enabling a lot of smaller podcasters to access sponsorships and get in contact with brands that they might otherwise not be able to. So it's really great to hear that walkthrough. At this point, I am very excited for our next segment, which is going to be led by Marilyn, our creator partnerships lead at Descript, as well as Sabrina and Garret, who are the hosts of I Know Dino. So we could not be more excited to have them here to chat with all of us today and to share their expertise. So I'll turn it over to you, Marilyn.
Thank you so much, Miki. I have the absolute pleasure of introducing Sabrina and Garret, hosts of the I Know Dino podcast. They're here with us today to have a really fun Q&A about definitely dinosaurs, of course, but also just community, the community built around podcasting and how they've used Descript and Podcorn to continue to grow that incredible community and all that they do as incredible podcast hosts. I want to give a really quick intro for those unfamiliar with the I Know Dino podcast. This was a favorite quote that I found from your website where you say, "It all began in 2015 as two newlywed dinosaur enthusiasts wanted to learn more about dinosaurs." And the fact that you felt that there just weren't enough podcasts out there about dinosaurs, I couldn't agree more. At this point, they have over 350 plus episodes, 2 million downloads, and over 100 interviews that they've done with dino enthusiasts and fans across the world. Thank you guys so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, very excited to be here. We've already learned some hot tips.
Yeah,
from both
Yes.
that
sides.
control K while editing videos. I got to remember that one.
Yeah. Yeah, that was some great demos. And I just want to say also, we're going to be chatting with Sabrina and Garret about I Know Dino and their podcast. If you have questions about anything that we were talking about before, all the way through to now, please just go ahead and leave them in the comments and we'll answer as many as we can. I definitely want to start our conversation with, just want to ask, was there any recent dino news or announcements that are just worthy and important to bring up at the top of the show here?
Oh man,
It's hard to narrow down.
so we did we went to a paleontology conference like a month ago, and we're still getting through the news on that because it's like a year worth of news.
Off the top of my head, one of the big ones is there's a paper that is thinking they did a bunch of analysis and research, and the number of T-Rex that lived was probably in the realm of 2.5 billion
Total.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's also a new, well, maybe new, depending on who you're talking to, longest dinosaur named Supersaurus.
Yep.
I mean, it's not a new
Perfect
name.
name.
Yeah. Yeah.
I love that. And I also just have to ask, because I do have a couple experts here, I heard that there's a lot of buzz around dinosaurs having had feathers. Is that a thing? Like a conversation about them looking more like birds?
Yeah, so all birds are dinosaurs. Birds evolved from a specific group of dinosaurs, and that group of dinosaurs had a lot of feathers. Do you want to show this?
Maybe you saw this in our 30-second video. This is a Velociraptor plushie.
You can see its
see the
wing feathers here.
Yeah.
Because Velociraptor was one of the dinosaurs that did have feathers.
I love that. For some reason, I just envision it as more of a fluffier prehistoric era now with feathers everywhere, and it's just makes it even more fantastic. Well, let me hop into a couple questions here to start us off. I definitely want to hear more. As I said, I love that quote about you guys being newlyweds and feeling that you both love dinosaurs and there weren't enough podcasts. Tell me a little more about the origin of the I Know Dino podcast.
We both loved dinosaurs as kids. Land Before Time, Jurassic Park, grew up on those sorts of movies. And then, I don't know, you kind of get to the teenage years and your interests change a little bit. And then when we met in college, and afterwards we ended up living in New Jersey for a while. We go to the American Museum of Natural History all the time and kind of rediscovered our love of dinosaurs there because they have this huge dinosaur hall. And it's amazing. And then we decided, well, we got married and we decided to have this dinosaur themed wedding. So that picture that was earlier, his name is
Oh my gosh!
Oh yeah, that's the one.
Oh, I see it. That's amazing.
It's a guy in a suit and an animatronic head, and it was at a zoo. It was fantastic. All the adults loved Duncan, and the kids were a little nervous.
It was pretty scary.
Yeah. But after the wedding, Garret had been listening to a lot of podcasts. He got into podcasting just a little before me and noticed that there weren't any weekly dinosaur podcasts out there. And there's a lot of great paleontology podcasts, but just specific to dinosaurs, because there's new discoveries literally every week.
Yeah.
So
the weekly is important.
Yes. So we decided to just dive in and do it ourselves. Actually, one of our earlier episodes was with Jack Horner, which you saw in the demo. We were looking at that. Like, which cool. TED Talk of his is that?
Yeah.
Right?
He's very well known. He's one of the 3 paleontologists that Dr. Alan Grant is based on for Jurassic Park. So
Oh yeah, I can kind of see it a little bit there too. I love that. And then, so what was it about podcasting as a medium that drew you in as the way that you wanted to get all of your excitement and information across?
Yeah, so we started I Know Dino as a website, and the reason we started this website was originally we couldn't find all the dinosaur museums because it's hard. Like a lot of them are kind of hole in the wall, and those are actually some of our favorite ones because it's like they often have touch bones where you can go in and like touch bones, which is something you can't usually do at huge museums because they don't want them all covered in like finger oil. But so we started this website, which was iknowdino.com, and it mostly had this museum map on it. So we did that for a few years. And we were looking for something else to do with dinosaurs. And then we discovered there was no dinosaur podcast. And we're like, well, I guess we could try that, even though we didn't know how to podcast. So our early episodes, like, I hate thinking about people listening to them because they're like, oh, I didn't know what I was doing. We didn't use Descript, obviously, or really any tools to make it sound that great.
Right. But now, as of this year, I'm happy to say we're both working on the podcast full time. Mm-hmm. So being able to use both like Descript and Podcorn really helps streamline everything. Yeah. And it helps us in many ways, the editing side, the monetization side. It's good. Yeah.
I love that. I'm going to dive in on both of that topic with you guys too. I also just like to ask this question to creators and podcasters. As you started out in the beginning, so you knew you wanted to do this, was there a moment that you kind of defined as your first big win as a podcast, as in content creation, that you started to think, I think I could do this full time. I could do this for a living.
We timed our podcast pretty well. We launched in January of 2015, which was about 5 or 6 months before Jurassic World Dominion came out. And so a couple
regular Jurassic World.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, not Dominion. Sorry, Dominion's coming out next year. I've got Dominion in the brain. The first Jurassic World, came out. And so after a couple of months of doing this, we were able to talk to the people at Apple Podcasts, and they featured us. And then, things kind of sparked from there. And we realized like, oh, we've got something here.
Yeah. Then I think a little bit after that, we launched a Patreon page to crowdfund. Mm-hmm. And then, so there were some people that were like, oh, we'll help you make the show by giving you some money. And we're like, oh,
and we opened up different ways for people to get in contact with us. And the feedback that we were getting was very encouraging and positive.
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. I love that. Yeah, it's that important catalyst moment that you realize, wait, this is something I could do. And I just love hearing that from every creator I chat with. I do want to just talk really quickly about both Descript and Podcorn. So up to you if you want to answer this question sort of at the same time, but I just want to know a couple ways that you're using Descript and Podcorn to do all of the incredible pieces that keep the I Know Dino podcast going.
Yeah, so I'll start with Descript because we started using that one first. A little over a year ago. And I do all of our podcast editing, which Sabrina sometimes tries to get me to outsource, but I don't want to outsource it. I like doing all the editing. And so there are a few things I realized that really make it a lot faster. So one of them is being able to delete the gaps in between words, because if you're used to podcasting with crazy huge words, the easiest way to do it is you just sort of pause, figure out how to say this big complicated word, and then say it correctly the first time. And then if you can automatically delete that silence, it makes the editing really quick and easy. So we were using a tool that's designed for music production to do that. And that was expensive and cumbersome. And I had to write a script and run that to do all the actual deleting. And so I wanted that feature integrated in something, along with the ability to do the non-destructive edits, which is great. And Descript also does that. So as soon as I found that Descript does both of those things, and literally nothing else I could find did that, along with easy edits, I was like, okay, I'm going to use Descript. And then I found a whole bunch of other features I like too, like the doing transcripts and
audiograms.
Yeah, audiograms. We were doing audiograms in another program. So it combined a lot of the programs into one, which was awesome.
We also started this year, we launched a course called Complete Podcasting Course, because we were both able to do podcasting full time, and we thought, let's share this knowledge and help other people. And we used Descript to make the screen recordings and also to caption everything, and it was incredibly easy.
Yeah.
I was so amazed at how easy it was.
Yeah, I think you guys launched that feature to screen record maybe a month before we started recording these videos.
Perfect timing for us.
And I was like, editing is so easy in this. And I watched the video of when you guys came out with it. And I was like, I'm going to try this. And it was so much easier than editing it in a more a big time video editing software. It's just like you could drag the words the same way. I was used to it. So that was awesome. Yeah, appreciate that feature for sure.
And then on the Podcorn side, we started using it a few months after Descript, and it's been great because just like Agnes was saying, we can reach out to brands so we know we're a good fit. We found like we're pretty niche. So we've worked with ad agencies before, and it just, wasn't quite the best match. But when we were able to advocate for ourselves, then it works out really well. Also, the non-exclusivity is great, and the fact that you get paid right away is amazing. Sometimes things take a while.
In the advertising world, a lot of times you get paid like 3 to 6 months after you do an ad, and sometimes that's even after a lot of reminders. So getting it immediately is really nice. Yeah, that's definitely a huge benefit. Plus, the very small fee that they have is less than anyone else we've worked with, which is really nice too. So yeah, all around, we like both a lot. And they both also allow us to spend more time like focusing on the content creation side of things, which is obviously what our listeners want us to do and also what we want to do. We don't, we're not professional like audio engineers or professional ad salespeople. Like we like to talk about dinosaurs. So the more of that we can do, the better.
I love that though. But I honestly too, in my experience, sometimes niche, I feel like a lot of creators, I'm really glad you brought that up, will feel a little, they want to kind of shy away from the fact that they are niche when they're trying to reach out to brands. And what I love about your podcast and definitely Podcorn is there's still so much opportunity. There's every sort of a brand match you can think of as possible. And having a platform just like Podcorn is the perfect space for that, to figure out what's going to make sense. And so I also am just a huge fan of Podcorn and all they do. Amazing. Well, before we jump into the Q&A, I have a couple creator-focused questions I'd love to ask you, just sort of general advice for the creator community. I'll start with the topic of community. And again, I love the idea of it also being niche. I feel like it's even made you guys more tight-knit, but I just want to hear, things that you guys like to do to keep your audience engaged and keep that community sort of giving you feedback. I know you brought feedback up, and just some tips for creators who are trying to understand how to engage a podcast community.
Our probably favorite aspect of our community is using a Discord server that we've set up for membership. So people come to the server and we just talk about dinosaurs all day.
Yeah, it is my happy place. It also really motivates me to get work done. So if it's like a day where I'm like, I got to do all this stuff, and I don't know, like, is it, it's just one of those days where it's like hard to get going. I'll look at the Discord server and see a whole bunch of people that are like excited about what we're doing. And I'm like,
I love that.
Yeah. But we also when we're having upcoming interviews with some big name paleontologists, we'll give people a heads up and ask if they have any specific questions they want us to ask them, or people can request, we call it a Dinosaur of the Day segment, where we do a deep dive into a specific dinosaur.
Yeah, we just did a watch party a few days ago too. So we'll chat on the Discord while we're doing that.
Yeah,
there's lots of cool stuff. And that one, you can do Discord on its own if you don't want to do like a crowdfunding thing. It also integrates with Patreon, which is what we do. And then we have no trolls because you have to pay to get into the Discord server. No one's going to pay to troll people, which is another side benefit of it.
Yes. Oh, that's awesome. And then I guess also on the topic of sort of the niche sort of subject of a podcast. So a lot of podcasters have the desire to make content, but they don't know how to nail down that topic. Tell me how you guys at the beginning started to figure out how to make each episode have a specific sort of format, how you built that out.
Yeah, so in the beginning, our episodes were mostly like a dinosaur of the day. And we were both still working full time on other jobs. So that was like about as much as we could handle.
We're also not formally trained in paleontology. So there was a learning curve.
Yeah, we know a lot now, but we've been doing it for 6 years.
7 years.
7 years. Back then we wrote like scripts, like fully scripted everything. We would do all the research. Sabrina has a background in journalism, so she could really research a topic and make sure that everything was buttoned up. And so like our first episode is like T-Rex. So it's like us going through T-Rex, and we have an interview with a guy who's an expert on T-Rex. And yeah, so that was like sort of how we started. And then we expanded because like we always wanted to do news because like we were saying, there's like a new dinosaur discovered pretty much every week. So we added that in. And then so we had the interviews, the news, the dinosaur of the day. And then sometimes we do like reviews. And I like to do a fun fact at the end just to like,
which can be tangentially related
so,
to dinosaurs.
yeah. They started out as like a sentence and now they're usually like 10 minutes.
That's kind of like a fun thing we have with our community now. We used to call it going down a rabbit hole, and then we learned that there are burrowing dinosaurs like Eryctodromaeus. So now we say Garrett's gone down the Eryctodromaeus burrow.
Oh, I love that. Fantastic. I think really just one more question here, and then I'll open it up for Q&A for anything. Again, guys, feel free to leave a comment if it's for our friends at I Know Dino. Questions about Podcorn or Descript. We'll answer as many as we can. My last question for you guys is about networking in the podcast community. I think another big sort of hurdle that a lot of creators have is how do I sort of, maybe there's a group where we can all like share each other's episodes and how we're editing and all that we do. What's some of your advice and or experience with networking with other podcasters?
There are a lot of groups out there, but overall, it never hurts to just reach out and talk to people or ask if you can hang out sometime. Or, if there's conferences help. For us, it was even just reaching out with the different tools that we use and tap into those communities. And we found the podcasting industry as a whole, like very friendly people, very welcoming, very, willing to engage and answer questions.
Yeah, I usually find emailing is the quickest way to get responses because there are a lot of different like websites where people can post if they want to collaborate. And sometimes that can give you a good lead on where somebody is. But people often sign up for these platforms and then sort of like evaporate from them. So if you send them messages through those platforms, no matter what it is, there's a decent chance they're not going to see it. So if you find somebody you want to collaborate with in any way, I would say like probably you can find their email.
And worst thing is maybe they don't see it or maybe they say no, not right now, but at least you've asked.
Yeah.
And it can lead to some wonderful things.
Yeah, collaborations are a great way to grow your show. So I highly recommend reaching out to other podcasters.
I love that. Well, great answers, guys. I'm going to open up here. I think our team has been looking at some of the questions. I believe they're going to pop on screen for us if there are some crowd questions. Awesome. So I'll read them out loud as we go along here. So, hey, I Know, how did you grow your audience in the early days of the podcast? So kind of piggybacking off that, when you had an audience of 0, how did you go about growing that audience?
It's a good question.
So we went from 0 to 50 listeners kind of through SEO, I guess.
Right. We knew using the words dinosaurs, dinosaur podcast.
Yeah.
Making sure that you had that in we have I Know Dino, the Big Dinosaur Podcast. That's the name of the show.
Yeah.
So you got the words in there. And then episode titles are very important.
Yeah, back when we started the show, podcasting wasn't a huge thing, so that's why we have podcast in the title. Now they don't recommend putting podcast in the title, but we already had it, so we're kind of stuck with it. But definitely you want a keyword. So if you do, there are a lot of tools to look at what the best SEO words are for your subject. So like Google AdWords, I think that's what it's called, right?
Google Keyword Planner.
Keyword Planner, there we go.
Right.
Sabrina obviously is the one that does this part of it. You could use that to see which keywords you should use and then make sure you have like one of those in your title because the title is the most important thing for SEO. So we had dinosaur in the title, so people looking for a dinosaur podcast, if they're just Googling it, I guess about 50 people did that within the first week or two. And so that's how we got them. And
setting audience expectation or listener expectations too. We always knew we wanted to be a weekly podcast. So we from the beginning, we've delivered weekly. There was I think it's not as big now, but Apple they still have a new and noteworthy section. So something like the first 8 weeks after you launch, you can try to be noticed on there, and it helps to produce multiple episodes throughout each week.
So we were doing 2 a week in the beginning to try to get on there, which we never made it very high on the new and noteworthy, but it might be how Apple noticed us for the feature thing for Jurassic World.
Yeah.
So we don't really know why they noticed us, but
that's awesome. Wait, can you tell a little bit about that, about the Jurassic World part?
Yeah, so we launched the podcast, I think it was about 7 or 8 months.
6 months.
Oh, it was only 6 months? Okay. So it came out in June. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Before Jurassic World came out, and they were looking, I think they just knew Jurassic World was coming out because there was so much advertising around Jurassic World. So sometimes Apple will put together sort of a relevant list of podcasts on the top. They have their little banner at the top of things that people might be interested in. So I think they were looking for some dinosaur stuff because they were like, Jurassic World, people are looking for dinosaurs. And like we said, there really weren't a lot of dinosaur focused podcasts. So they reached out to us to
Yeah, and
do
it's easier now, and we've seen it on I think Spotify has something now, Apple Podcasts has something, Amazon Music has something where you can submit. You have a special episode coming up, give them a few weeks, and then if it's a good fit, they might reach out back to you.
Oh, that's
There
so
are ones you
cool.
can. There are also ones you can pay for, which is another way you can grow your audience in the early days if you want to. So you can pay all these different people some amount of money, and they'll put like a little banner on the bottom of their ad. I would say it's probably only useful in the very beginning because it'll get you that little start.
Yep. The bigger way to do it is to collaborate with other podcasts that cover similar topics to yours, or that has an audience similar to yours. Just reach out, and there's different ways you can do it. Like you can do feed drops. You swap episodes in each other's feed. You can do where you interview each other. What are some other ways we've done?
You can do post-roll swaps. So like at the end of your episode, you say, oh, there's this other episode or this other podcast that's kind of like mine, and they do the same thing. And then you both cross-promote that way.
I love that.
We've got more in our course too. I don't want to take too much time. I know there's other questions.
Awesome. Looks like we have a Podcorn question here. Miki, did you want to read it or?
Sure, I can read the question out loud for anyone to answer. Is there a trick to monetization beyond having a huge audience? So maybe we'd love to hear both from Agnes and maybe also from Sabrina and Garret to see if you guys have any thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I can jump in first, but I mean, from what I see, I think there's a lot of education now amongst brands that they see the value of smaller creators. That brands used to think that in order to see conversions, they needed to work with the biggest stars, but a lot of brands, especially like when they're first starting out with working with creators, they it's a hit or miss with like a celebrity creator, and the audience is often very broad, and so the brand, it might not be a fit for like what the brand is actually about, but they're just trying to tap into a celebrity name, and then it has such a general audience that it doesn't end up really converting for brands. But so I think like in terms of trying to monetize when you're smaller, it's really just tapping into brands that are within either like your niche or who want to target your audience, whether it's like males or females, and spelling that out, really leaning into like passion and giving brands a lot of sort of like, time on the episode or podcast. I think that goes a long way, or offering something extra, like, two ad spots for the price of one, just to get started and develop a relationship. I think those things, like creators going above and beyond, or just showing brands that they're passionate about them, whether they're, already using the products themselves and can really like provide additional insight. I think a lot of times brands are seeing that podcast creators are also sort of like great people to build products with, to get product feedback from. So just tapping into those aspects. And if you have a topical expertise on something, whether it's like health and fitness or wellness, or fashion, or anything, just really like honing that and letting brands know, even if it's like an expertise that might not be sort of like very obvious. You might be a musician also on the side, even though your podcast is not music related, but a company that sells drums might not know that. So spelling that out and tapping into other things helps you get hired.
And just to add to that, in terms of other things you can offer, is if you have some social media channels or an email newsletter list, you can say, okay, well, in addition to talking about this on our show, we can also send out a message through these other channels.
Yep. Yeah, whatever else you're doing can sweeten the deal for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, even if you have, a Facebook group that is for your podcast, you can basically like count those audiences as part of like your pricing to the brand, and whether like it's an Instagram channel or a Facebook group or a blog post, there's other ways for you to be able um, to qualify that into your fee.
Awesome. Well, we have another question here for Agnes from Carol. Hi, Agnes. Do you have sample proposals that are effective?
I believe we have some resources within the platform that you can access some sample proposals, but you can also reach out to support, and we're happy to share some examples of what works. But essentially, it's just really like, doing your homework on the brand, making sure that you don't copy and paste. It's kind of obvious, but I know it gets frustrating with a lot of podcasters when you're sending a lot of proposals and you kind of want to send the same thing to everybody, but just taking that extra step to show the brand that this is custom for them. Also, I recommend always like leading with the creative idea versus like with yourself, because the brand can, look at your podcast, they can listen to it, but just letting them know and leading with like, what is it that you want to do for them? Come with an idea of how they're going to be integrated, what you want to do. If you have an exciting guest coming on and you're thinking about integrating them into that episode and you think it might get a lot of listenership, let the brands know that. A lot of podcasters, what they do when it works is they actually record the audio for like what the ad will be in their proposal. So versus just like writing something out, they do the ad already. And that makes it so easy for the brands, because they're like, oh, wow, great. Like the ad is done. I love it. Hire. And that's it. And you get hired right away, and it streamlines the process and your work is already done. So that is also effective.
Yeah, that's very key. Sabrina and Garret, do you have any, just curious if you have any sort of examples you can remember of where you thought that you might be a great collab, and you kind of reached out, whether it's a brand or another creator?
Yeah, there was one brand that makes puzzles,
Mm-hmm.
and they're these gorgeous puzzles that, did they have any dinosaur specific ones? They had birds.
They had dragons too.
Dragons and birds. I thought, okay, birds
Nice.
and dinosaurs, that works.
And also dragons are probably based on people finding dinosaur fossils a long time ago.
Right.
So yeah, we reached out to them, and we had seen their ads on other platforms before, and we're like, okay, I wanted to buy one of these things and I resisted the urge. And so I'm familiar with the brand. I know that they make cool stuff. So we reached out to them and told them about this dinosaur connection we were thinking about.
Mhm.
We mentioned that we could include, like, because we have a decent YouTube following. So we're like, oh, we could also share it on our YouTube channel and some other stuff. And then, yeah, we got that sponsorship going.
It was more than one ad too, so it worked out really well.
Yeah, because it doesn't have to be per episode. You can, you might have mentioned this, but you can do like 4 episodes, for example, and say like, here are the dates for 4 episodes, and you can bundle it together with like the YouTube and all that, and say like, in total it'll cost this much. And then, yeah, I think what we found everywhere with advertisers is like, the more you explain the thing and make it as simple as possible for them, like if you're not asking them any questions, you're just like, I'll do this, like Agnes was saying, like even if you pre-record the ad, so it's just like all they have to do is say yes. The closer you can do to a yes or no question, the better off it's going to be.
Yeah, and to add that, those are amazing points, and like repetition really works. So we really recommend it to advertisers. So like podcasters, who have already, like if you've done a sponsorship with a brand and something's worked, like doing the ad several times, like letting the brand know that. And also the repetition is a great way to kind of do bundle pricing, because if, podcasters are under 1,000 downloads, it makes it hard for them to price themselves on a CPM basis. But if you offer the brand several ad slots, then you can easily like throw out a fee in there that kind of makes sense for you, for the work that you're doing, and for the several ad spots. So bundling also helps you with pricing for sure. Yeah.
The last thing I'll add on the point of pre-recording your ads is that overdub can be a really quick and easy way to mock something up. So let's say that recording something is maybe time consuming for you, or if you want to put out multiple pitches and make them personalized, but not have to record each of them. Overdub, our synthetic voice tool, can be a really quick way to mock things up in the voice of yourself. And give brands a sense of what your ad will ultimately sound like.
More ways that
Awesome.
two platforms complement each other.
Great answers, guys. We have another question here from Rachel, who asks, what are industry standards for how much you can charge based on what your CPM numbers are? I guess kind of open for Agnes.
Yeah, so again, we allow podcasters to price themselves. So, it kind of depends, like what is enough, one, for you to keep your lights on. It doesn't have to be based on a CPM. But if you want to price yourself based on a CPM, what we see is a range anywhere between $15 to $50. And I know that's a big range, but basically the way to kind of look at it is that if you're going to do a host read that is like 15 to 30 seconds, then it's on the lower end of the scale. If it's, something more integrated where like the brand is part of a topical discussion or a roundtable and they're getting like 15 minutes of airtime, or they're getting like the entire episode because you're doing an interview, you can charge more towards the like $50 CPM range. And we really recommend, so also like in your proposal, we do have an ability for podcasters to add our pixel in order to be able to show brands like their listenership. If you don't have to do that in order to use Podcorn, but it does authenticate you further with the brand. And we recommend it even if you're small, just because it makes brands feel safe, like they know what they're getting and what they can expect. But if you don't do that, at least send a screenshot from your hosting provider that shows brands like what your listenership is, or just how you're justifying your fee. It just helps you get hired. It doesn't, like, we notice that brands don't care if your listenership is small. They just want to know that you have something, or that you have a listenership, and that you're being transparent about it, if that makes sense.
That's so key. I hope everyone heard that. It doesn't matter if you have a small audience. There's still so much opportunity out there. I can't echo that enough. And I think Podcorn especially is such a fantastic tool for this. Okay, it looks like another open question here. In 1 to 2 sentences, how and when should we monetize a podcast?
I don't know if I should take one, or if you guys want to, you guys maybe go first.
Sure.
Say as soon as you want to.
Yeah, I would say you can start a crowdfunding thing immediately. Even one listener is enough for that. It might not be enough to excite an advertiser, but sometimes we have heard of podcasts where they're so niche focused that they actually sell ads before they start the podcast, because it could be like such a specific topic, especially if there's like a business focus to it. You can reach out to sponsors that are relevant, before you even start, and just be like, hey, I've got this hyper-focused thing. So yeah, depending on how interested you are in like going for it, you can go for it, whatever you want.
And then, obviously advertising works well. And then there's also the membership factor if you wanted to go that route.
Yep.
Yeah. And with Podcorn, like the only thing you need to start monetizing is to actually have your podcast be live. Because you need a podcast URL in order to get started. But it's kind of what you guys said. You could have even like 500 listeners and get hired. It's basically like, for instance, if you're an expert in a certain field, whether it's fasting or business, and maybe you have, clout on another platform, you can tap into that clout in order to get hired for your podcast. Or you can, be like, I'm starting this and I this type of episode, and I want to collaborate with a brand on this type of content. Like, you can also do that with brands in terms of like creating fresh content just for the brand specifically, because, podcasters, they're sort of brands in their own right. Brands are getting someone who knows how to make great audio content, who knows how to use tools like Descript to make it amazing. And a lot of brands are green when it comes to that. So even doing something with a brand that is a branded podcast, sometimes it's an opportunity for you to do it right off the bat.
Excellent. I think that was the last question that we had time for, but just want to do a quick wrap up. A huge thank you to Marilyn, to Agnes, and especially to Sabrina and Garret. I've learned so much. I'm sure our audience has as well. A couple of kind of parting thoughts for everyone. On the Descript side, if you have any questions for us, please visit help.descript.com, or you can email support directly at support@descript.com. We'll be happy to answer your questions and help you all get started. Visit podcorn.com for any questions related to Podcorn. And of course, Sabrina and Garret have their podcasting course. And so check that out as well if you'd like tips from the experts on how to use Descript and Podcorn together and how to create a really successful and engaging podcast for your audience. And so with that, we'll close out. Thank you all for joining us today. And thank you again to our guests. And we'll look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.